My name is Grace Chan McKibben. I'm the Executive Director for Coalition for a Better Chinese American Community, which is a policy and advocacy organization based in Chicago's Chinatown. And we started in 1998 and had been working in civic engagement projects as well as community planning. And we had recently won had a historic win of having the first ever Asian American Majority Award in the city of Chicago. But I myself have been in community work since the 90s. And in a lot of ways, I feel like a baby organizer looking at folks from San Francisco, which is the oldest Chinatown in North America, and just learning from what they've done. So I think I'm just so happy and honored to be with all these folks today to talk about their experiences and share their stories. So I'm just going to go around and ask everyone to introduce themselves. First, the makers of the film. So we have Harry, Chuck, and his son Josh, and also James Chan. Harry, go ahead. Please introduce yourself and say one thing about what you're excited about or proud about the Asian American movement.
One of the things that impresses me a great deal these days is the presence of younger people taking an interest in the movement. They're quite talented, they're smart, they're committed, and sophisticated. So here they come.
That's great. Thank you so much, Harry. And Josh?
Hi, thanks, Grace. My name's Josh Chuck. I'm one of the co-directors and producers of Chinatown Rising. And one thing that excites me is the movement for Asian American studies and ethnic studies happening across the country, including Illinois, right? You know, I think if I had Asian American studies as a young person in school, I think my outlook on life would have been a lot different in a positive way. So it's exciting.
Thank you, Josh. And James, who's also producer of the film. If you can introduce yourself and go ahead.
Thanks, Grace. Hi, everyone. My name is James Chan. I am based here in San Francisco with Harry and Josh. Many things excite me about the movement, and one thing in particular is being right now on the Zoom call with 3 Jedis from the community, Pam, Gordon, and Harry. So blessings.
Yes. And now to the Jedis. First, Pam, if you can introduce yourself and, talk about Jediism and, what you're most excited about, go ahead.
Yes, I'm Pamela Tau Lee, and I'm here based in San Francisco. I'm considered an elder now and been involved since around 1969. And what I'm really excited about is there's a group that I helped to bring together. We're called the Grassroots Asian Rising, and it's all various Asian community-based organizations across the country, New Orleans and New York and Chicago and LA and North Carolina. So I'm very, very excited about the work, and that folks are now the young people, like the millenniums. Is that what they're are really stepping up, and it's beautiful.
Thank you, Pam. And last but not least, Gordon, who is the retired executive director of Chinatown Community Development Center. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Grace. And I guess with the Star Wars analogy, I'm sort of one of the Yodas of the Asian American movement across the country, like Pam. But I think one of the things that really excites me about the movement is because of COVID, because of anti-Asian hate. I have never seen our community so united and so understanding of how we're connected across the country, across our different ethnic groups, across generations, geography. The Asian American and Pacific Islander community is, I think, more united now than we have been. And we need to use that strength to take it to another level going forward.
Yeah, that's exciting. I think we're in very exciting times. And as Gordon said, we need to see how we can harness this energy to move forward. Going back to the film, I think that, Harry, you said that right at the beginning of the clip, that you have all these footages and you really didn't know when you're going to finish the film. What made you decide that now is the right time to finish the film, and why is it important to connect the past to the present? Go ahead, you need to unmute, Harry.
I first began working on the film as a student in college. And so much was happening. Many things were happening for the very first time. So I had difficulty finishing that film because I didn't understand the implications of all these events and moments. And because I was already working in the community and the church and at a community center, I decided that I didn't want to make anything that was frivolous. So I just kept shooting and storing away my raw footage. Well, that rainy day finally came when nearly 50 years afterwards, Josh came up to me and said, "It's time to make a film on Chinatown." So on the cusp of my 80th birthday, we went to work.
Yeah. So Josh, what is it like working with your dad on the film? Showing things that you've never seen, because they all, all this happened before you were even born. Like, what is it like?
Yeah, I mean, I think working with my dad was filled with unique challenges. I think, as if you could imagine, maybe working on a project for 4 or 5 years with one of your parents. But I think those challenges made the experience so much more meaningful in the end. Just working things out with him and learning how to relate to him as a peer, as adults. It really has been such a meaningful and personal experience. Going into this effort, I really knew almost nothing about the Asian American movement. I knew almost nothing about the activism that occurred in my neighborhood not too long before I was born. And I didn't know anything about my dad's life and what he had achieved as an activist and organizer. So for me, that's what I'm most grateful for with this project, is learning about my neighborhood's history, and also especially my dad's and family history.
Yeah, I think that, a lot of times young people think that, all these issues that we're dealing with, affordable housing, safety, and so on, are new issues, right? But some of these battles have been fought before. So I actually want to turn over to both Gordon and Pam to talk a little bit about, this connection from the past to the present. Gordon, what do you think about this idea that, young people need to learn the same lessons over and over again, and whether there are specific things that you think we need to do to help connect folks to the past?
Well, the clip that was shown earlier had a scene there where the mantra of "we won't move" was very evident. And that's a calling that all of the housing activists have always used. And they learned that from the struggle for the I Hotel in the 60s and 70s. But I tell the new activists, and I even tell the old activists, that they were not the first people to cry out, "we won't move." Back in 1906, when the city hall and the downtown interests wanted to move Chinatown, Chinatown fought back, and they said to the city, "we won't move." So we need to understand our immediate past and our past, and understand that we were not the first activists. The Chinese have been fighting, the Asian Americans have been fighting ever since they immigrated to this country. And we all need to remember that going forward.
Yeah, I think that's really important to know about, our histories and what battles have been fought in the past. And I think that also, connecting different kinds of people. Pam, I have a question for you, that you were a grad student somewhere else, and then you came back to San Francisco, right? You were in Chicago, in fact, right? Go ahead.
No,
No,
I was just down the road from San Francisco. I was at Hayward.
Right, at Hayward, UC Hayward. Yep.
Not as exciting as Chicago.
Yeah, but
complete your thought. Sorry.
yeah, I was just talking about in the film itself, it talked a lot about the connection between the student movement and the activist movement. So
yes.
Just connecting the different pieces of activism is important. Can you say a little bit about that?
Oh, sure. That period I was on campus, two UC Berkeley students came down and they were fighting for Asian studies at UC Berkeley. And when they came, I was in a meeting that I just stumbled into called the Orioxy Club. I had just got on the campus and they were sitting there talking about who they were going to run for Miss Chinatown. And I'm sitting in the back going, wow, this is kind of like interesting. This is before the term Asian came around. So I'm sitting back there and these two students came, Jean Kwan and Floyd Yuen, and talked about Asian studies, and that what they would be talking about was identity, history, but one key part was for us to learn skills so that we could go back to Chinatown to serve the people. And they were highly influenced by the Black Power movement and the Black Panthers in terms of return to community, serve the people, love the people. And so I'm sitting back there, and then they started talking about, well, what would that mean? Well, that would be talking about addressing issues in the garment factories, in the single room occupancies, the health conditions, tuberculosis, suicide, mental illness, violence in the community, anti-Chinese violence. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, that is my story with my grandmother. My dad had tuberculosis, so I had to live with my grandmother, and in a single room occupancy. And every day I'd go to the garment factory with her, and I'd see how the boss treated the women. And so when they brought that on the campus and said return to community, I was one of two people who raised their hands out of 30 students and said, I'm there. So they a week later, I got a call to show up to 842 Kearny and 850 Kearny. And 842 was Asian Legal Services. Now that was before the Asian Law Caucus and other things. And at 850 Kearny was the International Hotel. That was 1969. And that part was part of my life all the way through to 1977 at 3:30 in the morning, the night of the eviction. And then this is after that, Gordon, oh my God, the work that Gordon's organization, we were there, to defend the hotel. And then Gordon and his crew made sure that that hotel, that space grew. And yeah, Gordon can tell that story. It's beautiful.
Yeah, or for either Gordon or Pam, I think what you both talked about is the intersectionality of issues, right? That, that housing is not just an Asian issue or a Black issue. It's a lot of different communities of color face similar challenges, and we can build solidarity through working together. So can you say a little bit about Chinatown in particular? People look at Chinatown and see this attractive tourist attraction. People come to Chinatown for food or to buy knickknacks, and they don't really see people living in Chinatown and the issues. And how do you bring that to light, and how do you share that story with folks?
Well, I think Chinatowns across the country share a lot of commonalities, both in terms of external perception, but also in terms of how we perceive ourselves. Our Chinatowns are alike because they are the first places that we identified with in this country. And they are places that have been besieged by racism, by unscrupulous landlords, by uncaring city administrations, and whether it's Boston, New York, San Francisco, Seattle, Chinatowns and Asian American communities have a similar perspective about their place in this country, or the lack thereof. So whether it's a physical threat from displacement, demolitions, etc., or a legal threat given the immigration system, or physical safety threat given the violence against Asian Americans, all the Chinatowns across the country and Asian American community share those common perceptions with each other. And it is our job, and Pam and I sort of learned this early on as young people getting involved in our community in the 60s, that we needed to be in this for the long haul, right? Our mentors like Harry Chuck and George Wu taught us, this ain't game, this ain't fun and games. If you're going to be committed to this community, you better dedicate your life to the community. And we all did that. We didn't consciously know what we were doing, but it was experiential. It was emotional. And for many of us, it sort of linked our own excitement, given the movement that was happening around the country, with a longing for identity, but also for connection with our families. And it was weird because many of our families were against our activism. Don't rock the boat, don't get in trouble, don't embarrass the family. But over time, our families became proud of what we were doing because we were dedicating our lives to their community. And I was dedicating my life to my mother's Chinatown. Right. So there's strength that comes with that. And that strength of coming together with family through the work we're doing, it's one of the assets that has kept me going, for 50 years, and I'm sure Pam as well.
Yeah. Pam, do you have more to say about the connection between the different issues and how they relate to each other?
In terms of the community, the different issues in the community, the intersections of in the community. Oh yes, I mean, I can. One of the organization that I work with, we did a whole study and that the workers led around the issues of health, and part of the issues of health, they said that health is the most important thing to us, because without our health, we cannot work. Without our health, we cannot take care of our family. And that was the most important thing. Even, and then the second thing was around wages and the issue of wage theft, because in terms of that, the theft of wages, the not paying minimum wage and all of that, and we work together to lift their voice and to show the data of the effect of wage theft on people's health, on the family's situation, and then in terms of the community and the community needs that arise out of that. And out of that study, when the workers brought it to City Hall, that raised the minimum wage for San Francisco. And out of that, from the streets of San Francisco, now you have a nationwide call for 15, the call for 15. And people don't know that that started on Grand Avenue and in San Francisco, Chinatown. So but I think James also has a lot of insight into this because you live there,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, James.
I do. And it is because of you and Gordon and Harry and your blueprint of what it means to serve the community. And so I apply it to serving the community through film. And so when Harry brought a 15-minute clip and he says, can you take a look at this home video that I'm thinking about making?
Mm-hmm.
Against that backdrop. So to me, it's been a privilege working on this film with Harry and Josh, and absolutely echo everything Gordon has said and Pam has said about when you look at where we are today, it maps back all the way to the gold rush of 1849 here in San Francisco, Chinatown. Across, from then on, Chinatown was through the public health perspective and health officials and politicians, they saw Chinatown as pretty much as a laboratory of infectious diseases, urban sickness, crime and poverty, right? And then contamination. And so we've always been either labeled the medical menaces all the way to the myth of model minority. So it's kind of like back and forth. From my perspective as a filmmaker, I get to be able to validate and amplify our community stories. And so it's been a blessing and a gift.
Yeah, just staying on that a little bit, James, now that the film has made, a national debut, where do you want to take it next? And do you have plans?
Yeah, this is a film that I wish that I had growing up in our history classes. And now because it's finished, it is possible to get into the classrooms. And Josh has done this amazing job by pushing it out and amplifying the message. And the greatest news right now after this broadcast is that we are now in the San Francisco Unified School District's curriculum with this film.
That is quite amazing. And I'm going to put in a plug for Illinois. Illinois just passed the Teach Act last year as the first state in the country to pass state law that requires every K through 12 school to teach at least one unit of Asian American history. And then New Jersey just had their own version of the Teach Act, and we hope that other states will follow suit. And it's so exciting. I think education for the next generation is so important. So talking about education for the next generation, I think that, a lot of you talked about the generational divide. And, as I said, sometimes young people today think that we're the only one, or my children think that they're the only one who are working on things that their parents don't understand. And you all have experienced that too, even 50, 60 years ago. So this is a question to either maybe Harry first, and then Pam, and then Gordon. How do you get the elders involved? How did you get the elders involved 50, 60 years ago? And are there lessons that we need to learn today? Harry? Go. Yeah, there you go.
Well, we had a lot of help in Chinatown. There's a man after whom a film should be made. His name was Sam Ewan. And Sam was highly educated. He immigrated to the United States, and he worked at a number of menial jobs, including, well, it's not really menial, but worked at the post office. When he came to Chinatown, he saw the tremendous needs that the seniors had, and he organized an agency called Self-Help for the Elderly. And it was because of his vision for the elderly, that they were able finally to reach them. You know, the elderly have always lived under very difficult situations in SROs, where there were very, very limited amenities. And many of them often just died in their rooms without any with any support, and until they're, you know, until it's too late. So someone has coined this expression about this being an intergenerational trauma because of the division of the generations. But we see that coming together in this film, where young people reach out to the seniors, and the seniors joining us in at City Hall during the, and I think we're very special moments when both seniors and young people came together and made their testimonies before elected officials for the very first time. And it was also the very first time when everything was translated into Chinese, so that seniors who were monolingual could follow the proceedings and also to express their concerns for their communities. So that continues today. There are many agencies in Chinatown that make it a point to bring together young people and seniors. And I think this really contributes to the affinity of our community. And as a result of that, we were able to benefit from the trust that the seniors had when we worked with them to bring about some changes in Chinatown.
Yeah, thank you, Harry. Gordon, do you have any other insights about working with seniors and
Sure.
working across generations?
Right. Well, we've always embraced the concept of intergenerational organizing. And that happens in many different types of activities. It involves self-interest, but also common interests. For seniors, for instance, self-interest led them to participate in movements for affordable housing, which they needed. Our youth organizing focused on their self-interest, which is forcing the school district to have more better school lunches, right? But then they also work for common interests. Our youth in Chinatown, the Chinatown Alleyway Youth Association, did pedestrian safety mobilizing to help their grandmothers and seniors have a little safer time crossing the street. Our youth, families, and seniors have done voter registration together. So it's bringing people together as families across generations is very important because it breaks down stereotypes. And we certainly stereotype our youth as having energy, but no wisdom. We stereotype our seniors as having wisdom, but no energy. But I know a lot of seniors that are ain't got no wisdom at all. And I know youth who are very wise, wise beyond their years. So bringing people together, grandparents, parents, and kids in common activities towards social action is a very important strategy that I think all Chinatowns and all Asian American communities need to embrace.
Grace, can I add a little bit something?
Yeah, yes.
Because,
And I have another question for you too, Pam. Go ahead and add to that.
okay. So for me, the International Hotel and my other experiences on the Kearney Street block, it was actually the older people that organized me. We would sit and we would be painting and the hallways, and I was learning how to put on doors, you know, and it's the elders standing there talking to me about how to get involved and the perspective, and equipping me with their experiences, but they were organizing me. And the other place that I was at, in the storefront at 850 Kearney, we had a storefront down there, and it was the elders from the 1930s, the Chinese Workers Mutual Aid Association, and they were organizing me and telling me, if you want to be able to do work that helps the community, then you need to focus in on the issues of the working people of the community. And so it's in terms of the intergenerational, I wanted to put another kind of way in which that looked like. Gordon and Harry will know, I used to stand on the corner of Jackson and Kearney and sell newspapers. And so, you know, radical newspapers, and people would come up and talk to me and tell me about stuff. And I would leave in the morning, go down to Silva, and I knew I didn't have to have breakfast, because I knew that people would be bringing me char siu bao and coffee and standing there and talking to me. So, you know, the community organized, you know, me, that there's different spaces in which that can also happen. Mm-hmm.
I love it that, you know, that we learn as much from the community. I think sometimes people think that organizers are the ones with all the answers, and that, you know, but we learn so much from community members. But I do have a specific question for Pam. The organizing space, the governmental space, and the public policy space, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, even today, is very male dominated. So as a young woman then, and as a woman who works in this work, what does that feel like? And how do you make space for you and other women in organizing?
Yeah, I think we had a lot of role models. My grandmother was a role model, and just the different people that you meet. One of the spaces is public health, right? And for me, going into those, it was mostly male dominated in the public health, and I was there with a vision of public health starting to pay attention to communities of color, because public health and a lot of the work that I was doing was focused on white men, carpenters, construction workers, and so what I was bringing into that was one, as a woman in a room full of men, carpenters and others, and bringing in the issues of workers of color. So I guess for me, it was the grounding that I had in my early days that gave me confidence in what I believed in, and you know, just go out and own it and do it. Yeah.
Thanks. I think that confidence is so important, right? I'm going to ask Josh and James this question about the confidence and working with older people. I think, Josh, you alluded to how difficult it is, or maybe not how difficult it is, how interesting it is to work with your dad on a project. I mean, did you ever feel like intimidated that he has so much experience, and that and telling these stories? You know, how do you navigate that? And James too, you know, maybe, yeah, go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, we're able to like look back now that we finished the film and kind of reflect on things that may have been stressful at the time. But looking back, it's like, oh, it was just fun. It was a good time. And as a team making a film, it worked out because my dad, he knows so much. You ask him one question about one event, and he will go and tell you like so much history and so many people who are involved and all this stuff. And then for me, I knew nothing. And so it actually, when making a film, because we're limited in how much time we have to present things. And so it was kind of like he had everything we needed and more. And I kind of had a fresh perspective to kind of hear all of that and process it for the first time, and see what really was what caught my attention, what made me emotional, and what links that I made as a beginner, in learning this history. So it's kind of like, whereas my dad would see 100 links, I could only see a few links, which is a good balance when we have a limited time in making a film. So I thought it was a great dynamic for trying to get something done.
One of the special moments in making this film was how Harry can make a phone call and everybody, and this is through the testament of who he is as a human being, everybody be like, yes, let us know when, we'll show up. They show up. Harry is behind the camera asking the questions, and we were filming it, and everybody's like, well, you've been there, Harry, you know what it was. And so they would skip over all this information, and we're all like, Josh, you're gonna have to step in there and ask these questions. And so then it became this reveal.
Yeah, that's so cool. I think, because Harry was there and everybody knows that he can fill in the details. But yeah, it is quite interesting. I mean, when you're making a documentary, it's not like you're scripting, following a script, and so things happen, right? So one of the most poignant moments in terms of storytelling in the film was when Harry, in the public testimony, said, I have 5 minutes and I'm going to show a documentary, show this film. Harry, can you walk us through, that scene, and, what were you feeling like? And that was actually the moment when people were able to see the living conditions of folks in Chinatown. Yeah, go ahead, Harry.
Yeah, that's when I first recognized how powerful images are. And, it was pretty clear that most elected officials were not interested in coming into Chinatown to check things out. And part of that grew out of this particular mantra from our elders, who were at the time the leaders of the community, who always said, we have no problems in Chinatown. At least we don't have any problems we can't solve. And that went on for the longest time until we realized that change had begun to find its way into Chinatown. And it was our task to, make that message clear and acceptable. So when we brought the film and the projector and extension cords and everything, and sort of broke up the meeting at the Board of Supervisors, it was a very unusual moment. And the place was packed with supporters from the community, and as well as the press. And I think that by the time we got through with those 5 minutes, I think we had made our point, and we made it very strongly. There was tremendous impact. Those images that we shared with elected officials, they're almost hard to watch, and and I think that the reason why I selected those clips is because it was hard for me to watch, And but I wanted to share that, and I knew that it would make the point that we wanted to make.
And indeed it did, right after you showed that clip, the Board of Supervisors voted unanimously to have affordable housing.
Yeah, we
building.
have many hoops that we had to jump through, and that was certainly one of them.
Mhm. Right. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we talked about, challenges, we talked about these stories that are difficult to tell. What kinds of stories do you think are there today that we need to keep telling and sharing with folks that are outside of Chinatown communities, outside of Asian American communities, for them to understand us more? Pam, we'll start with you, and then we'll go.
Yeah, well, this is a work in progress right now, but our organization, the Chinese Progressive Association, is meeting with another group called Coleman Advocates. The members of each group are meeting, and the members and the staff from each group is meeting. And with the members, it's Black and Chinese. So the meetings are being held in English and in Chinese, Mandarin, Toisan, and Cantonese. The purpose of these exchange, and then on the staff level is Black, Latino, Chicano, and Chinese. And the purpose of this dialogue right now is people are they're sitting at the table and to learn from each other their issues and their histories. And so one of the first things that the members did together was to go to Chinatown and to go on Stockton Street and to go into the various shops and buy groceries. And then after they bought groceries, they went back and they cooked for each other. And then they talked about what as they're walking along Stockton Street, and then they went up and visited one of the SROs that people lived in. And so this is also happening in the Bayview, where people are sharing different experiences. It's going to take a while, and it's not very easy, but it's the goal is from the members themselves that this is what they want to do. Mm-hmm. And this comes at a moment in terms of, a lot of the anti-Asian situation. And so some of these discussions have been very hard, but they've been very important and good.
Great. Gordon, what do you think that, I think there was one clarification for Pam. I'm going to just read this from Caillou Lee, who's actually here in Chicago. But she wants to know if you still remember the title of the Chinese Workers Report that later helped raise the minimum wage.
Oh, it's called Check Please. So all you need to go is to the Chinese Progressive Association, and there you will find Check Please. And let me tell you, we had a lot of community people telling us that they really didn't like what we were doing. But if the workers said that this is something that needed to be done, they would do it. And our goal was our goal was to try to reach about 120 people. We got 700 workers come to fill out that survey. We finally had to say, stop, because we couldn't run the office, do any more work. And so, yeah. But we got a lot of folks that were angry with us, yes.
And Caillou has another question. she said one of the people that she talked to, she actually did research in San Francisco recently, and one of the interviewees said that the success of San Francisco's Chinatown cannot be replicated. I mean, we know that, some of the things that you all have put in place, like a Chinatown plan in the 80s and rent control and controlling the number of stories that buildings can be, is pioneering. But do you agree that the success of San Francisco's Chinatown cannot be replicated? And do you have advice for other Chinatowns? I'll ask Gordon and then Harry and Pam. Gordon, go ahead.
Well, Grace, comparing Chinatowns can be challenging because we do tend to either glorify our successes or bemoan our defeats. And the glass looks a little different from thousands of miles away. There are lessons we need to learn from each other, though. And many Asian American communities, have benefited from strategies of rezoning, for instance, not just San Francisco Chinatown, Little Tokyo as one of the first Asian American historic districts in the country. The International District in Seattle, which fought against the Kingdom, was able to rezone their community and preserve much of it. The other East Coast Chinatowns have really been on the front lines against the most egregious kinds of displacements, particularly caused by freeways and jails and public institutions. Philadelphia, with the Mass Turnpike in Boston, Tufts University. Chicago, interestingly enough, seems to have escaped those types of egregious public sector displacement or private sector displacement experiences. But people don't know the real history that Chicago Chinatown was forced out more insidiously. It wasn't eminent domain, it wasn't the bulldozer. The property, Chinatown was next to downtown Chicago, and but the property was owned by white people. The Chinese did not own any property, so there was an insidious campaign not to renew those business licenses and leases. So the Chinese were forced out of their original Chinatown to up north to where they are now around Cermak. But now the current Chinatown, the new location, is also sort of feeling some pressures from new development. So we should understand the real estate dynamics, the economics that is happening in all of our communities and figure out sort of micro strategies to deal with them. There are no easy sort of macro solutions to preserving our communities. The techniques, the technical techniques, preservation, land trust, et cetera, we can share those. But none of those are going to make any difference without the leadership, the organizing, the political power in our communities. And we need to start there, right? We need political power. We need all the generations. We need workers working with businesses, working with owners. And that's one of the things that at least the anti-Asian hate stuff, the COVID stuff has brought people together to defend Chinatown, right? And defend to save restaurants and jobs at the same time. So we need to learn from those negative experiences to build more collaborative strategies across sectors, across geography, and I'm quite hopeful. But we need to learn from each other as communities all over the country.
Yeah, thank you, Gordon. That's it's a great wrap up of all the themes that we have. But I just want to go around. I mean, as an organizer, you all know that we're fond of like one sentence checkouts. So if I can just go around, everybody just say one last thought about if you want one takeaway that you want folks that listened in today to take away from this conversation? What's one thing that you want them to take away? We'll start with Josh, and then Pam, and Gordon, Harry, and then James. Go, Josh.
One thing I learned from talking to all of these amazing activists is that before they got involved in social justice and community organizing, they all shared that they knew absolutely nothing about how to do that. And so, for a lot of us who might feel like we don't know where to start, or we're not super activists enough. No, we don't need to be. We just need to kind of go with our heart and try to do what's right.
Pam, go ahead.
I think for me, the takeaway would be for us in the communities to really also reach out and to build bridges across, and to really learn from each other, because this is a moment in which the dominant themes out there are to divide us, and we have to push back and talk in our organizations and put out in the community. So I've written an op-ed that will be printed in the Chinese newspaper this week on Sunday about restorative justice. And we'll see what happens.
Great, thank you, Pam. Harry, and then Gordon and James. One takeaway for folks.
I think I would agree with Josh that without the wisdom of all the people that we interviewed, and we interviewed well over 30 people, there was just a tremendous wealth of information and experience. And as always, even during this panel discussion, I sit at the feet of my good friend Gordon Chin, who has such a gift for bringing things together.
Thank you, Harry. Gordon, one takeaway for folks that are watching.
Well, I've sat at Harry's feet for many times myself, but I would say, part of the model minority myth includes a perception that Asian Americans are so passive and really academic, researchers. And I tell our planners and staff that public policy is important, but policy without firm advocacy is nothing. And advocacy without organizing is nothing. So we need to be smart. We need to speak out, but we need to have people behind us and in front of us when we speak out.
Thank you. James, take us home. No pressure.
No pressure. Yeah, if you look at the end of a day's work, end of a decade's work, and all these amazing activists that have come through the timeline of our history, we are looking also that needs to be brought up is the intergenerational trauma that gets passed through, and how we can publicly speak about that and hold each other's trauma and validate one another's story. I am a firm believer that if you don't transform trauma, you end up transmitting it. So when you're working with youth, it really is a needed topic to open up, to be able to go and say, you know what, your grandparents have always told us not to overshare, not to process our feelings, not to cry. Don't cry, things will be okay. But that's, to me, it's like you become stagnant. And so in order for this movement to keep going is the necessary need to and reach to for connecting to the emotional health and well-being of the youth as well as the elders.
And with that, thank you, everyone. Thank you to our wonderful panel. And I'm going to close this all out so you can all turn on and watch the documentary itself. Have a great evening, all.
Be well, everyone.
Take care.
Wonderful
Thanks,
to
Grace.
see you. Yes, all.